amazing people. Welcome to I Am Beloved podcast. My name is Bernice Rivera, founder of I Am Beloved, and I am super excited that you have decided to take this journey with me as we navigate towards learning how to forgive ourselves, heal ourselves, and love ourselves through God's eyes. Stay tuned because we have an amazing episode up next. Hola, mi gente linda. Welcome to episode 2 of I Am Beloved podcast. I want to thank you guys for being with me today and joining me as we talk about healing. This season is all about healing. I also want to take a moment to say Happy Hispanic Heritage Month to all of my Latinos. I am proud to be a Latina, and I thank God for that. Today's episode is titled There's Power in Your Scars. And I want to read from John chapter 20, verse 24 through 28. Now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Like I said, today's episode is titled There's Power in Your Scars. And this is such a powerful story. Thomas was one of the 12 disciples. And in this chapter 20, they discuss how right after Jesus resurrected, one of the first scenes and one of the first moments where he reappears is when he reappears in front of his disciples. And the first time he reappears in front of his disciples, Thomas was not there. So a few days later, they tell Thomas, "Hey, we saw Jesus. Jesus resurrected from the dead." And Thomas right away says, "Oh, unless I see it, I'm not going to believe." And I'm sure you have heard of the story before. Many preachers and many teachers have taught on the story before, but they tend to focus on Thomas and Thomas doubting that Jesus had resurrected. Thomas had doubted that Jesus was actually alive again, and as he had promised that he was going to be alive on the third day and resurrect on the third day. And a lot of scholars focus on that. But today I want to focus on Jesus. As I was reading this, what really caught my attention was that one of the first things that Jesus does after he resurrects is to reappear to his disciples and then to show them his scars, the scars on his hands from the nails that had pierced through his hands on the cross, to show them the wounds and the scars that he had suffered from when the spear pierced through his ribs on the cross. And as I was reading and as I was reflecting on that, I was like, wow, like the first thing that Jesus does is show and prove to his disciples his scars, show his disciples his scars. And the first thing that it taught me was Jesus's vulnerability. Jesus being God, he was 100% God, he was 100% divine, but he was also 100% man. And the first thing that he does is show his disciples his scars. He's not afraid to show his disciples his scars. He's not afraid to show his disciples everything that he went through. Why? Because he wanted to teach his disciples that if he overcame what was meant to kill him, so can you. And it just catches my attention that many of us have gone through so many things in our life. Maybe physical abuse, maybe verbal abuse, sexual abuse, betrayal, infidelities, slander, and gossip. And many times the first thing that we want to do is to hide our story, to hide the pain that we went through, to hide the things that we went through. And Jesus, being the Son of the living God, he was not afraid to show his scars to his disciples. He was not afraid to show his scars to the world. He understood that there was power in his scars. He understood that there was power in his story. The reason that I wanted to teach you guys that there's power in your scars is because for a couple of months and for quite some time, I struggled with understanding that there's power in my pain, that there's power in everything that I have gone through. For a couple of months, since the month of about April or so, I was struggling in a really, really deep depression. And you're gonna hear me talk about this in several of my episodes, especially during the season 1 of healing. I was going through a very, very deep depression. I was in a very dark place. And for those of you who don't know, I'm the youth leader at my church. I lead the youth. And like I have mentioned, I'm a pastor's kid. I've preached before. But during this season of my life that I'm still currently walking through, I decided that I was going to stop preaching. I decided that I was going to stop teaching the youth. Why? Because I felt like I had nothing else to give. I felt like I was in a desert. I was going through a drought, going through a dry season where my cup was dry, where I had nothing to give. And it's true, we can't give from an empty cup. But I think that many times we have the misconception that because I'm going through something, because I'm struggling, I'm less than. I'm less of a Christian. I'm less of a son or a daughter of a king. I have nothing to give to anyone, so might as well stay silent and not speak about what I'm going through. And one thing that I've learned throughout my walk with Christ is that many people want to preach about the desert when they're already in the promised land. Many preachers will get on the altar and preach about, one time I was struggling with depression and one time I was struggling with suicidal thoughts, but thank God the Lord delivered me. And that's great. That's amazing. But everybody wants to teach and preach about the desert while they're standing on the promised land, while they're standing on the other side. And I have learned throughout my walk that I don't want you to preach to me about the promised land when you're already there. I don't want you to preach to me about the promised land while I'm here in the desert drying up, while I'm here in the desert dying, when I'm here in the desert struggling with depression and anxiety and not knowing what the future holds for me. I don't want you to preach to me about the promised land when you're already there. I want you to preach to me about the desert while I'm here. Don't talk to me about the promised land, but come to the desert and meet me where I'm at and teach me and preach to me how I can get to the promised land. Grab my hand and show me and walk with me on how I can get to the promised land. And I didn't understand that. That's why I was hiding the depression I was going through from my youth. That's why I was trying to hide and mask the struggles and the anxiety I was going through from my friends, from my family members, from my parents, from my pastors, not understanding that there is power in my scars, not understanding that people right now at that moment were also struggling with depression, were also struggling with anxiety, and they just wanted to be able to identify and know that if Bernice is still holding on for dear life, so can I. And that is why Jesus understood that the first thing that he needed to do was to show his scars to his disciples because he understood that there was power in them, that there was a story that he needed to tell, that there was deliverance in his scars, there was deliverance in his pain. And I came today to tell you that enough is enough, that you have power in your scars, that you have a story that is important to tell, that there's others waiting. I read this quote that said, and I want to share it with you. There's a quote that says, somebody somewhere is depending on you to do what God has called you to do. Stop thinking that you have nothing else to give. Stop thinking that just because you're going through a tough season in your life, there's nothing that you can teach. There's nothing that anyone can learn from you, because it is there in your dry season. It is there in the depression. It is there in the anxiety where God will reveal to you the most important lessons that need to be taught, that you need to teach to others. One day while I was going through this season in which I'm going through right now, I was having a conversation with one of my really, really good friends. She told me, Bernice, God has called you to be a pastor since you were a child. But until you learn to believe in that, until you learn to believe that you were called to be a pastor, until you learn to believe that you have everything inside of you already, that you have everything inside of you and you have what it takes to be a pastor, you're not going to be able to walk into the divine calling God has upon your life. And until you understand that, you are going to delay the calling of God over your life, and you're going to delay the calling of God and the promise of God over everyone and over those that surround you. Why? She said, because Bernice, there's nations waiting for your yes. There's people right now that are struggling through depression, waiting for you to accept the calling that God has placed over your life, for you to say yes, for you to stop thinking that you have nothing good to give, for you to stop hiding behind your filters, for you to stop hiding behind the fake smile that you put on each and every day, pretending that everything's okay, for you to stop hiding behind the likes and the comments of people and to say, yes, I have a story to tell. Yes, I have been abused. Yes, I struggle with infidelity and betrayal in my marriage. Yes, I struggled with depression and anxiety. But yes, I am saying yes to God, because I know greater is He that is with me than He is against me. Because I have understood, and I want you to understand, that there's someone somewhere that is waiting for you to share your story with them, and to share with them how God set you free. How even though you might still be struggling with anxiety and depression, how you have chosen to trust in the Lord with all of your heart and to not lean on your own understanding. Because that's what I had to understand. That even though I was struggling with depression, even though I was struggling with anxiety, even though I was struggling, feeling like I had nothing else left to give, that it was in that moment where I had no other option, where I had no one to turn to, because I chose not to turn to anyone, because I chose not to turn to my friends, because I chose not to turn to my family. But it was in that moment where I had nothing else to give or no one to reach out to. The only option I had was to trust God. The only option I had was to cling on to God and to know that His ways are higher than my ways. His thoughts are higher than my thoughts. That even though that my dreams and my hopes had come crashing down, that even though that the person I thought I was going to be with for the rest of my life, all of those hopes and dreams came crashing down, the only thing I had left to cling on to was Jesus. And know that He loves me. And know that His plans are greater than my plans. And know that He has plans to prosper me, plans to give me a good hope in a future, and not plans to harm me. So today I leave you with this. It is time to stop hiding behind the selfies, behind the likes, behind the filters, behind the fake smiles, and to go out there into the world and share your story, share your pain, share your struggles, and share how God set you free, because there's power in your scars. Thank you for joining me tonight. I love you all, and I hope that this episode blessed your life. Adios. Thank you for listening to I Am Beloved podcast. I hope you enjoyed yourself and that you are walking one step closer to your healing. See you next time. Adios.